In the early 2000s, Cynthia Cooper, a vice president of internal audit at WorldCom, did something few others have the courage to do. She exposed a billion-dollar financial scam that shook the corporate world. Her actions didn't just bring down one of the largest companies in the U.S. at the time, but they also revealed how corporate fraud could be concealed under layers of financial misreporting. This is the story of how a determined woman, with an unwavering commitment to ethics, uncovered a financial disaster that would change the future of corporate governance forever. WorldCom was once the second largest long-distance telephone company in the United States, second only to AT&T. The company was riding high in the late 1990s and early 2000s. WorldCom had made numerous acquisitions, and its stock was soaring. But as is often the case with many large corporations, beneath the surface, things were not as they seemed. Corporate profits were inflated, and the company's financial health was being obscured by accounting manipulations. And for years, no one was the wiser, except for Cynthia Cooper. Cooper had joined WorldCom in 1999, taking on the role of Vice President of Internal Audit. As part of her job, she was tasked with ensuring the company's financial reports were accurate and compliant with regulatory standards. Cooper had spent years building a career in accounting and auditing, and she knew the importance of transparency and accuracy in financial reporting. It was a role that would soon place her at the forefront of one of the largest financial scandals in American corporate history. The turning point for Cooper came in 2002 when she was asked to investigate some unusual accounting adjustments. The company had been in financial turmoil, struggling to keep up with its debts and stockholder expectations. As WorldCom's financial troubles mounted, the company had turned to questionable accounting practices to maintain the illusion of profitability. Cooper, known for her meticulous attention to detail, began to probe deeper into the company's financial statements. What she found was shocking. WorldCom was hiding billions of dollars in expenses. The company had been using an accounting trick to shift operating expenses to the balance sheet as capital expenditures, which artificially inflated the company's profits. This allowed WorldCom to appear more profitable than it actually was, leading investors, analysts, and regulators to believe the company was on solid ground. At first, Cooper's findings seemed too staggering to believe. The figures didn't add up, and the discrepancy was huge. When she dug deeper, she realized the fraud had been going on for several years, covering a range of misleading financial statements and false filings. The numbers involved were truly massive, over $11 billion in fraudulent accounting entries. But what Cooper discovered wasn't just one isolated accounting error, it was a systematic, deliberate manipulation of the financial records by the company's top executives. This wasn't a simple mistake. It was corporate fraud on a colossal scale. Cooper knew that if she didn't act quickly, the deception would continue, and more investors and employees would suffer. Cooper had always been dedicated to doing what was right, but this was an entirely new level of corporate dishonesty. She began raising concerns with her superiors at WorldCom, including the company's chief financial officer, Scott Sullivan. At first, she was met with resistance. Sullivan, one of the key architects behind the fraudulent accounting practices, dismissed her concerns and tried to reassure her that everything was fine. But Cooper wasn't convinced. She continued to investigate, determined to uncover the full extent of the fraud. As her investigation progressed, the pressure on Cooper mounted. She began to receive subtle threats, with some of her colleagues warning her to drop the issue or face the consequences. She was told that if she pressed further, her career could be over. After all, WorldCom was one of the largest companies in the country, and its executives were well connected. But Cooper wasn't someone who would back down. She knew that if she didn't act, the fraud would continue unchecked. Cooper's job was on the line, and she could have easily walked away. After all, she had a family to support, and exposing the fraud could destroy her career. But she refused to turn a blind eye to the wrongdoing happening at WorldCom. She knew that the future of countless employees and investors was at risk. Realizing the gravity of the situation, Cooper escalated her findings to the company's board of directors. She presented her evidence in a series of meetings, showing how WorldCom's top executives had orchestrated the accounting fraud. But rather than taking immediate action, the board hesitated. It was only when Cooper was able to get the attention of the company's external auditors, Arthur Anderson, that the issue began to gain traction. Unfortunately, WorldCom's external auditors were not as diligent as they should have been. Arthur Anderson, one of the largest accounting firms in the world at the time, had already come under scrutiny for its role in other high-profile corporate scandals, including the Enron collapse. But at that point, it was clear that the external auditors had either missed the fraud or had been complicit in turning a blind eye to the irregularities. Cooper realized that she couldn't trust the company's internal processes alone and needed to take the matter outside the organization. Despite the risks, Cooper knew she had no choice but to blow the whistle on WorldCom's fraudulent activities. She contacted the Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC, and presented them with the evidence she had uncovered. She also reached out to the media, knowing that public exposure would put additional pressure on the company to take action. The story hit the media like a bombshell. The Wall Street Journal and other leading financial outlets published detailed accounts of the fraud, and WorldCom's stock price plummeted. The SEC launched an official investigation, and within weeks, it became clear that the company had been inflating its financial reports for years. As the news spread, WorldCom's executives scrambled to distance themselves from the scandal. The company's CEO, Bernard Ebbers, was forced to resign, and the company's accounting practices came under intense scrutiny. In July 2002, the SEC filed charges against WorldCom, accusing the company of accounting fraud, securities fraud, and falsifying financial statements. In the months following the exposure of the fraud, the fallout was swift and severe. The company filed for bankruptcy, marking the largest corporate bankruptcy in U.S. history at the time. The executives who had orchestrated the fraud, including CFO Scott Sullivan, were arrested and charged with securities fraud. Sullivan was sentenced to 5 years in prison, and CEO Bernard Ebbers was convicted of conspiracy and securities fraud. Ebbers was eventually sentenced to 25 years in prison for his role in the scam. For Cynthia Cooper, the fallout from the exposure was both gratifying and painful. She had done what she believed was right, but the personal and professional toll was heavy. Despite the backlash and the pressure she faced, she remained steadfast in her commitment to ethics and transparency. Cooper's bravery led to widespread reforms in corporate governance and the enactment of the Sarbanes-Oxley Act of 2002, which imposed stricter regulations on financial reporting and auditing practices to prevent similar frauds in the future. Cynthia Cooper's courage in exposing the WorldCom fraud has left an indelible mark on the financial world. Her actions were pivotal in revealing the depth of corporate fraud and in bringing about meaningful change in the way companies are audited and regulated. Cooper was awarded numerous honors for her role in uncovering the fraud, including being named one of Time's 100 most influential people of 2002. But perhaps her greatest legacy is the reminder that ethics, integrity, and a commitment to truth can triumph even in the face of overwhelming odds. Cooper's story serves as an inspiration to anyone who has ever been in a position where doing the right thing seemed impossible. Her bravery in the face of adversity changed the financial landscape and set a new standard for corporate transparency and accountability. Cynthia Cooper's decision to expose the billion-dollar fraud at WorldCom shows that no matter the size of the company or the power of its executives, one person with the courage to speak the truth can make all the difference.